Hi, and welcome to the Still Life module of Photo IQ. This is Unit 3, where we're going to introduce food photography. Let's get started. So, how did your Still Life assignment from Unit 2 turn out? Were you fulfilled by the way that the process went, or were you frustrated? Did you feel something that connected for you? Did you feel like it told a story? Or did you not connect with it at all? Did you not feel anything? If you're not feeling anything from the process, then think a little bit harder about what you're trying to tell with your photography. There's a difference between being a technical photographer, which is somebody who knows how to operate a camera, and then an artist who knows how to tell a story. So that's what we're trying to develop. We're trying to develop not only our technical knowledge of photography, but also develop our character as storytellers. One important aspect of still life photography is the sequence that it takes to develop. It's not like in a single moment in time where you're going to capture an animal in nature or an athlete moving in space where that little glimmer of a moment is gone in a nanosecond. If you don't capture it, it will be a different moment. You're talking about still life, which is something that is there waiting for you to manipulate it. And it's not done until you say it's done. Unless you're talking about melting ice cream or something, it's not going to move. So you have plenty of time to make it the way that you want it to be. So I've already showed you this image, but this is actually the first frame from the sequence of 10 images that it took to create the final. There was a few things that we needed to consider. One was leaving room for ad copy, and what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with the term, is advertising copy, which is the written word. The word that you see on all those advertisements is called copy. So if you are a copywriter, you're someone who writes advertising copy, the content that you see on those images. And you might notice that on a lot of the images that you see, there is blank space, dead space, negative space. Those are all the words for the same thing. And that would be areas in the image where there's no busy detail, where there's maybe flat shades of color or tone, where there's no detail to draw your eye, there's no actual product to be looking at. So in terms of a lot of the images that I create, I have to be very aware of leaving negative space for ad copy because a lot of the times I'm shooting images for advertisements. Now, we're not going to be concerned about that here. I just want to draw your eye to it because you may wonder why there might be some blank spaces in my images sometimes. It's become something that I've sort of become used to over the years, and I don't really think about it anymore. Rarely do I fill the entire frame with product or detail. So in terms of your assignments, you won't need to be concerned about that because that's not the purpose of this. We're creating some artwork that is yours alone, and you don't need to worry about leaving negative or dead space. So we're going to just be focusing on filling the frame in the way that makes you happy. All right, so we're creating images just for you here, okay? So let's jump over to the full screen slideshow so that we can look at the process together. So in the first image, you can see that there's a lot of extra space that we had. And sometimes we'll start a little wider than we intend to be so that we can see what space we have to work with. We can see what's outside the frame, so to speak. So we can say, oh, I really don't like how much we're seeing of this vent over here. We were actually in a New York apartment building up rather high. So this is an old pre-war apartment building, which they're actually very beautiful apartments if you've never been in one. But you can see that there's this old vent that's up by the window, and there's actually a window air conditioner unit up in the upper right corner. And there's a lot of empty space down here, which is actually the shadow side of this desk that we're talking about. There's also a lot of deep shadows, which could be a little bit too moody for what we want. We're trying to fill in something that's a little bit more of a cheerful kind of environment. So you can see the next one, we start to develop the frame. We get a little bit closer, we crop out some of the unnecessary stuff on the outside. The same composition here though. We haven't changed the placement of anything. All we've done is get a little bit tighter. We've lost this notebook out here, and we've lost the air conditioner, totally gone, and we've lost a little bit of dead space down here. Now in the next frame, we bring in some of the more elements that we end up seeing in the final image. So if we back up, you can see that the silver plant potter has moved into the frame, bringing this green leading line. Okay, so it's all the way on the outside. It's creating a frame for us. It's drawing our eye into the image. We have added some more fill light, it seems. Actually, no, the exposure hasn't changed here. So we're still on the same exposure. Okay, we've moved some of these elements around here. The silver cup was here and is now over here because this is a big empty space, so we don't need it to be empty. And we've brought this pencil holder, which is actually sort of like a shell material. Not exactly sure what it is. Move that down. And we have created some kind of reflection coming back into it. Most likely I used a piece of white foam core or a bounce card. So often you'll see and on photography sets, something to use to bounce the light back. So here's a bounce card, a reflector. This is a pop-up reflector. So if I open it up, whoop, you can see what it does. So even right here in the set where I have my studio lights, you can see what happens to my face. So you can see the shadow side here. If I take that down, it actually fills in the light a little bit. And different kinds of lighting will do more of a dramatic effect. So the lighting in here is actually pretty low power, so it's not going to have a dramatic effect. So if you have a low powered light source, you can use something that's more reflective, and a lot of these panels have two sides to it. So you can see if I catch the light, I can reflect it back into my face more, so you can see what's happening there. And then to put these away, you fold it up like that. So that's an example of what I might have used in this situation to reflect back the window light and fill in some of the shadows so they weren't so dark. Okay, so back and forth. We added the letter opener and this pen right here. Other than that, all right, now we can, oh, and we also moved this leather box and brought it closer so that you can start to see the globe in there. To the next frame, back and forth. Okay, you can see we've added more reflection in here. So repositioned that. The light starts to get a little lighter down here. And we've added this little compass guy, this little, not actually sure what that is. And the shadow inside the book edge is getting lighter. So you can see that the reflecting source has gotten closer to intensify the reflection. To the next one. Now you can see we pulled out a little bit because I think we wanted more of that globe over here. So we pulled out a little bit. That brings in the electrical cord up here. So that's a negative. And the electrical cord is not something we can do anything about because it was an installed heavy window unit in a New York City high-rise apartment. So it wasn't like we can just easily pull it out of the window. To the next frame. The lighting gets a little more intense. Maybe I added a flash here. I don't quite remember, this is years ago. So maybe I added some flash that's reflecting against the opposite wall, bouncing back in, just to sort of mimic what the light coming through the window is doing. So maybe I'm bouncing a flash off the opposite wall. And that's actually the only thing that changes from this frame to this frame. So this one we have dark shadows, and this one the fill light is starting to come up. Okay. Then to the next one, we actually had this globe sitting on top, and then we moved it down into the shot. Do we like that or not? Move to the next one. I guess not. We didn't like it. So we moved it from here to here. So you can see we have this small cup here, we have the globe here, but it's starting to get a little bit too busy down here. And the attention is being taken away from the subject matter. Move to the next one. And it looks like that little cup just got eliminated entirely. It doesn't really need to be in the shot. It's not adding anything to the shot. So if we have to decide which one is going to add more to the shot, well, clearly the globe is. So let's add that in. Okay, and we moved this down a little bit because there's too much empty space on the table. Bring that down. Next one, we tried it without any flash or reflection just to see what is going on with the exposure. What are our highlights doing? Sometimes I'll do that. I'll shut off all the flash. I'll take away the reflection just to see where our highlights are, or just to see where a reflection or highlight is coming from. Then to the next one, we turn flash and reflection back on, and we adjusted our crop a little bit to get rid of that electrical cord up here and include a little bit of negative space over here. Okay, and that's where we ended up. So you can see, and down here also I backed up a couple frames. There seems to be, we're seeing through the table. Maybe there was a missing drawer or something, it seems like, in the desk. And with that space right here, this will draw your eye down here. Remember, your eye is going to be drawn to the bright parts of the image and the most focused parts of the image. So this down here is going to draw our eye away from the center for no good reason, because there's nothing down here that's informational. So in the next couple frames, we eliminated that light right there to make sure that our eye stays in the center of the frame. So leading lines in the image, you can see the plant with the leaves coming down this way, takes you to this little magnifying glass, takes you to the card. We have this little cylinder out here pointing us in this way. We have the letter opener and the pen pointing us in this way. Pencils pushing us down this way. The clock face is pointed in, and then you can follow these objects down and in like this, and this creates the triangle, right? It's an upside down triangle. But there are a lot of lines pointing us to the center of the image. So now let's transition over to food photography. Food photography is a subset of still life, but it is its entire own genre of photography with its own discipline and specialties, and practicing photographers whose only job is shooting food. There are a lot of multidisciplinary photographers like myself who do food, still life, portraiture, landscape. They do a lot of different things, but that's partially because I'm restless and I really have a hard time just focusing on one specialty or genre. I have a lot of different interests, and hopefully you do too. And so we're going to explore all of those throughout Photo IQ so that we can explore and get a taste of each of the different genres. The point of Photo IQ, again, is not to take you to the master expert level of all these genres, but to give you a taste so that you can become competent in exploring each of these genres on your own. One great thing about food photography is that it builds on all the fundamentals that come from still life photography, and indeed the other fundamentals of photography as well, like lighting ratios, how bright your highlight is compared to your shadows. The rules of composition, leading lines, the rule of thirds, all of these different rules still apply in food photography. So if you know your fundamentals, then you can very easily pick up any genre and be competent at them. So speaking of those fundamentals, the rule of thirds is a framing guideline, which you might actually see as a guide built into your camera. Some cameras have guides that you can turn on to give you some kind of framing guideline, like straight lines, a horizon, things like that. You might see an option in there for rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds is basically if you were to take your frame and divide it into thirds. So you have your left third, your center third, and your right third. Speaking of the photograph right here, you have your left third, center third, right third, and then you also have your top, center, and bottom. So your photograph is broken up into 9 sections. So if you have the guidelines on this image, you would see that the interesting part here that intersects will be on that top third line. Then you would also see that the place where the bowls line up here, that would be your left third intersection. Where the bowls intersect on the right side, that would be approximately your right third. And then this intersection down here would be the bottom third. So you can see the reason why photos work is actually comes down to math sometimes, which is not something that makes me happy because math is easily my weakest subject. But nevertheless, there is a reason why humans are attracted to these things. And I mentioned in Unit 2, symmetry and balance. Well, that comes down to things like the golden ratio, which is that thing that you've seen where it creates that spiral. And I'll try to find a little illustration to put on screen here for you so that you have an illustration of it. Images like this work within the golden ratio. Things just line up right. And sometimes that can be a way to help you cheat, but once you become familiar with the fundamental, you no longer need to refer to it. It's just in your mind at all times. Whenever you see an image, they just look balanced one way or another. It's just natural. They just fall together that way. Food photography is its own discipline because it takes all the fundamentals from still life and traditional photography and it adds 2 more elements to it just to make it a little bit more difficult. It adds time and fragility. And that's because food is perishable and it's very easily disturbed. So in an image like this with these beautiful Indian spices, I just love this photograph, you have very delicately balanced objects that can be disturbed by wind, vibrations through the floor. If someone were to bump into the table or even stomp by, sometimes you can see something that's very precariously balanced start to fall away. You know, think of sand on the seashore that's really dry, or dust in the desert or something. If the wind blows it, it'll be disturbed and fall down. So you won't have the ability to set something up and then depend on it to stay just the way that you set it up. You can also be dealing with cold items or very hot items that need to stay steamy in order to look appealing. You can be talking about objects that, so if it's cold, you might have ice that can melt over time. And when you are shooting those things, be aware of the ideal conditions that make them successful. So if you want to shoot a bowl of ice cream, don't take it out into 105-degree sun, okay? Or if you're going to, make sure that you're set and ready to go before you bring it outside. That might be the atmospheric shot that you want. You want the image of people out by the pool having a good time in the background to make that ice cream look more appealing. Make sure that you've done some test shots with an empty bowl, or make sure that you have more so that you can get a fresh bowl. These are the types of things that will help you to be more successful. If you take it out and you start setting up from scratch, that ice cream is going to be a bowl of soup by the time you're ready to shoot. So don't expect it to last that long. Be prepared for those kinds of conditions. Food photography is a very successful way of creating a feeling, because they pair together according to what event you're trying to do. If you shoot a picture of a birthday cake, what is the thing that you're gonna think of? You're gonna think of a birthday, a party, a celebration. If you're shooting something that's like this cheese, fruit, and cracker platter, you're thinking of an afternoon informal get-together, something like that, a picnic. These are themed events. So think of the items that go with that food or that event that you're trying to portray. The image should create desire in the viewer to want to eat, visit, smell, or partake in that event. It should make it look like, I want to be at that party. I want to eat that food. Wow, that host looks like they've really got it together. This looks like a fun party to be at. If you were choosing food that was old or damaged or just not appealing looking, nobody is going to want to come to your party. Okay? So keep that in mind. If you were going to be putting together a party invitation, you would not be putting spoiled food on that invitation. You want to put food on there that looks delicious. If you are one of those weird artists out there who likes to make people feel awkward, then go ahead and create some weird stuff with gross food, but make sure that you have a unique take to it. Make sure that you have something that is still composed and put together and thoughtfully put together. There is definitely a genre of art that is designed to make the viewer uncomfortable, but that's better than ambivalent. If I get nothing from your photograph, then it's just a lame picture. If I'm revolted or if I'm interested and intrigued, those are two opposite ends of the spectrum. You have created a reaction. I am not someone who goes for the revulsion. I like to create pretty beautiful things that look good and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Maybe call me a softie, whatever. But then, you know, you have to go for some kind of reaction. So the angle that you choose for your photography is very important in the way that you make your subject look appealing. Some subjects don't lend themselves well to a low angle or to a 3/4 angle, to a high angle, or a top down. It can really be dependent on the layout, the type of food that you have, etc. For example, we have oysters in this shot, and they wouldn't really look like much because they're so flat, and they're in a low serving bowl. So if the camera angle was very low, there wouldn't be any height to make it more dramatic. It would just be a low flat bowl. What would be filling that top headspace of the frame? So thinking geometrically, the shape of the serving tray is a circle, and each of the oysters itself is kind of an oval shape, which points back to the center of the frame. So we have natural leading lines going on in the image. We have a little fork that's pushing us in here. Each of the oysters has the joint part where is situated in the center. So it creates this kind of spiral pushing us back into the center. And then the glass of wine is there to sort of balance out the image. Down in the lower left corner, you can see that there's red hot sauce that's been striped across the oysters. The red color adds weight to the lower left of the frame. So since we have weight down here, you want to counterbalance it. So we have a small part of the frame with a dense hot color. And then on the upper right side of the frame, we have a larger object with a very pale color. So a very light color has less weight than a darker color, but the dark color is small and the light color is very large, and then that creates balance. Again, in this frame, we have very similar principles going on. It's a circular object contained within a square frame. And usually circles and squares and squares and circles, they look good together. I really like putting a circle inside of a square placemat, or sometimes we'll have circles inside of circles where we have a flat serving bowl or tray with a smaller serving bowl. Those create layers and interest in the frame. Again, we have a large block of a light color of this cauliflower, and it's inside a container of a dark blue and brown bowl. And then we have this silver fork with a leading line bringing us back in, helping to create some balance. So we have dark shadow, a light highlight, and then a large light colored shape. Again, balance in the frame, very important. Another overhead image, this is a straight top-down image of a round bowl with a square edge cloth napkin. Color blending, very important. So we have layers of this robin's egg blue bringing us into the bowl. And then we have this very, very bright, cheerful carrot salad with a multicolor heirloom carrots and edible flowers in there. Then we have the carrots here very carefully intertwined, and then creating that balance and symmetry. So you have the leading line that's curved around this bowl edge, bringing you back down. So it creates balance, a swirling effect, a spiral. So this brings you here and then back around, or however you decide to look at it in a circle, either going from in to out or out to in. It works either way. Now in this next image, we're breaking from the previous sequence of overhead top-down images. We still have concentric circles. However, it wouldn't make any sense to shoot this image from above because you wouldn't see the layering effect of the dessert. There's a little cake bottom and then you have a mousse top to it. If we shot this from the top, you would have no idea that it was a multi-tiered dessert. And that's kind of part of the appeal. It still would be very beautiful to see this little mint leaf detail on top of the circle, but you would have no idea what the bottom of the dessert is. So food photography sometimes is just as much about showing the ingredients as it is the presentation, as it is making a beautiful photograph. any one of those things can be a separate priority. So if your priority is simply to make art with food, then by all means, shoot it from above if that's what you prefer. But then there would be no need to create a cakey bottom to it. That wouldn't be necessary. If you're a baker, if you're someone who's like a dessert chef or something like that, and your interest is making beautiful looking food, but also showing the viewer what they're made of, then, like in a recipe. So a recipe photographs, you need to show what the object is made of. Otherwise, what is there to go on? So the balance in the image is created. You have your central focal point contained within a slate gray serving bowl, or a sort of a brown gray serving bowl. You have your chocolate design in the bottom. You have the powdered sugar that's dropped down here. And then creating that balance, the symmetry, the mirroring, you have your white coffee mug up here, and then there's, I don't know, some other kind of out of focus element back there. So that reflects this. So everything has a balance, a mirroring effect. So it's almost like you can fold it and create like a Rorschach pattern where you drop ink in the center, you fold the paper and then open it up again, and you create that butterfly effect. That helps to create balance in an image so that it just feels more fulfilling. It's compelling to want to look at it and to want to eat that object, and makes things so much more appealing. So again, I can't stress enough how important leading lines are. In this image of the buffalo wings, again, this is another example of low angle working better and telling a story, because this is like a barbecue restaurant that I was shooting in, and so we have a very kind of messy, sloppy plate, but this accentuates the texture and the color of the barbecue wings. So the lines here, again, you're creating this semi-shape here, the semicircle shape, and you have the buffalo sauce back there, and then there's a beer over here, and you have your silverware. So it's kind of like just served and ready to dig in. And so if you're there with your friends, you're there for a party, that comes to the table and everyone just jumps right at it. This is the moment right before everybody devours it and destroys it, so it still looks cool. So you have this kind of S shape going on in the image. So this curve taking you to the back and then taking you right back to the front. The focal point is right here. So in this image, we're using some depth of field play to draw your eye right to those perfectly grilled wings in the center. So building on the fundamentals that we learned in the last unit, I want to emphasize a few things going forward in this assignment for this unit. We have simplicity, color and composition, and of course lighting. I want you to consider those things when you get to this week's assignment. Create something simple, something that can draw your eye to it, but still have a lot of texture and detail and looks delicious. So pretty much find something that that you understand, and then you can manipulate in some way. Or find a cafe that you love that does a great job. Go there, sit next to a big window, so that you have some nice beautiful light coming in. If you have a small object like a cappuccino or something like that, use, like I showed you, some kind of small object to shield the interior lights of the shop, so that you can keep away that color contamination, focusing on the bright window light coming in the side. Don't be afraid to manipulate things. You can use stuff that is very fine, like toothpicks, or just use the edge of a clean fork or knife to be able to move things around. If you have greasy fingers and you start touching stuff, you're going to get fingerprints all over the plate. So try to be careful when you're doing it before you devour it. Take some time to photograph it, make something really pretty out of it. So, there's a lot of different ways that you could go. As I mentioned, go to a cafe and find a really well-done cappuccino or latte or something like that. I know that's a very almost cliched thing to photograph now, because social media has been littered with lattes. But that doesn't mean it's not a good exercise to be able to create a good photograph. There's a challenge in this, in that there is a very bright highlight with the milk, and then you have dark elements like cocoa or cinnamon that will absorb that light. So getting that exposure balanced is actually a bigger challenge than you might think. especially if you're dealing with a glass container or a stainless steel mug like I have here. The highlights are gonna be very bright. So you're gonna have a challenge in controlling for those elements. You can see with that mug right here, as I put my hand here, I block the highlight. If I put it on this side, then I can block that highlight. Once I block the highlight, you can actually start to see the texture in there. So look for something simple. All right, I want you to try to just narrow things down to what you can easily control. Find a couple of objects that look good together and then create a nice photograph. In this one, we just have a beautifully dark espresso with that crema on the edge of the glass, the mug. And then next to it, we have some raw sugar cubes. They look great together in the yellow ceramic and on that tabletop. Be aware of the elements that you're working with. Find the best way to combine them, frame them up so that they look appealing, and that so someone who's looking at that image would say, yeah, I really want that cappuccino. I think I'm gonna go out and get one right now. And lastly, think of the angle that you want to do. Do you want to do it overhead, top down, on a 45 degree, or all the way down at a low, we call a hero shot, which is when something is nice and big in frame and standing up. And this is something I shot just for fun one day. I was shooting some stock photography for food catalogs and recipes. And I just had a big bin of mung beans, and I had a couple of different bowls that looked good. I had this black dish, and then I had this red serving bowl, and I had this red tablecloth that went well. And it was just, okay, clean tablecloth, iron it, steam it, whatever it was, black, red, fill the bowl full of mung beans, set it next to a window, shut off the interior lights, and there you go, you have your photograph. So your assignment for this week is simple. Choose a food that is visually appealing to you, something that you know. If you know coffee, do that. If you know baked goods or bread or really well-made sandwiches on like a French baguette, something appealing, something good. Not something like fast food because it's just too low quality. It'll never look good because it's not made with any kind of care. Create 2 simple compositions because I want you to think of the building the shot one at a time. So start with something that you like, and then once you've gotten a good angle of that one, do a second angle of it. Maybe add another element to the background or to the foreground, or add a leading line in there to help draw the attention to the focus of that image. And consider your light and angle, okay? Which angle looks best? The angle that you use for the first image should probably not be the angle that you use for the second image. I would like you to consider making a series or something like that, something that tells one story of the object by itself, and then the second image tells another story, or maybe like a second chapter to the story that adds on to it, okay? So think of your coffee in one shot, and then the coffee and dessert in the next shot, where they go well together, okay? So I hope you enjoy your assignment, and I'll see you in the next unit. Until then, keep shooting.